9:02. We got everybody connected. Looks like we do.
I think we
All right.
do.
All right.
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
Greg is muted, but he can hear us. Greg, can you hear us? Greg, can you hear us?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Okay. Well, we'll call to order the April 28th video conference county board meeting again. And I did bring my little flag again. So we will we'll do the pledge seated because then we're all in the camera. So I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the
of the
United
States of
America,
and to
and
the
to the republic
and
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty.
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for all.
Thank you. I'm not sure if we have any members of the public. Are there any public members that want to make any kind of comment?
I'd maybe just like to, for anyone listening, if we do these meetings again, they can certainly get public comments to any one of us commissioners too, and we can read them if they're for them, just to let them know if there's they can still be heard one way or another. We'll get it done. So
Yes, that's a good point. With that in mind, have we come to any consideration for upcoming meetings? I have not heard if the governor, he had that May 4th. I haven't heard any new dates or anything. What would we have a plan?
Yeah. No, right. At this point, we're still continuing this way until told otherwise. We should know more. His original order or second order, whatever it was, ends May 4th.
May 4th.
So he'll have to make some decision probably this week on what he's going to do with that, and if there's going to be any other kinds of loosening up. But I think even with our staff, for instance, even if we can loosen up a little bit, we're doing a pretty good job remotely, so we're going to probably be more conservative going back to public meetings. I know the EDA's got a meeting coming up that's going to be online, and I know planning's been working on some of those kind of things. We'll try to get back to normal meetings as soon as possible, but we haven't gotten anything for the government or for the governor that's official yet.
All right. I thought maybe I'd missed something, but obviously I hadn't.
well, the next meeting is on May 5th, which would be after the 4th deadline. I mean, as far as we know right now, he's lifting the order on the 4th unless he extends it, right?
Which meeting are you talking about? The board meeting wouldn't be May 5th.
That'd be 12th. Second.
12th.
Oh, 12. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's still after the 4th.
Yeah. So we'll have to figure out what he says. So
Okay.
maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I would guess that protections for people who are more vulnerable will be extended even if certain things get opened up. So some of us might, or we might be required to provide an option for some of us older board members to call.
Yeah. Well, I noticed that Wabasha met and they basically put a chair between each person and then made sure there weren't, overflow in the crowd, had distancing. So, we don't normally have, significant attendance unless we get some kind of, one issue that brings people out. So it may be an opportunity where with social distancing and other precautions, we might be able to go back to a normal board meeting or somewhat normal board meeting. But we have to kind of play it by ear and see what the governor.
Yeah, this is Marie. I've had some comments from the public about access. Some people follow what's happening and most people don't, but even whether you do or not, you should have a clear way and almost like an invitation. So, I mean, I think we need to do some press or some kind of, announcements before the meeting so people can have the passwords and everything. They can always go on the website, that's true, but sometimes they're not quite that savvy.
Okay.
I agree with Commissioner Kavesi, and we cannot assume everybody has equal access to internet,
Exactly.
computer, or knowledge of the systems, just like myself this morning. Something changed on my screen. I had to figure out how to change it back. So yeah,
Right.
we have to be aware of that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
That
well,
came to me. That came to me from a member of the public. So, yeah.
yes. Yeah. Okay. And I also have had comments that the idea of talking to each other over the computer or submitting your comments via email or memo or something just doesn't have the same impact as a person-to-person, comment discussion, face. So we have to take that into consideration.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah.
All right. All right. So moving on, item 3, approval of the county board minutes from April 14th.
I move
Chris?
approval. Marie Bessie, I move approval.
Commissioner Meyer will second that motion.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Kavesi, seconded by Commissioner Meyer. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, carries. All responding aye. Item 4, acknowledge receipt of approved committee minutes from the Extension Committee, December 12th, 2019.
I'll move approval or acknowledgement of those minutes.
Second.
Commissioner Kavesi, second. Yeah.
Okay, I got Greg.
Good. Yeah, whatever.
Acceptance, move approval of acceptance by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Olson. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Hearing all ayes, approved. Acknowledgement. Item 5, consent comments and approval of the agenda.
Yeah, I just have one small thing on 6.1. We want the approval, I'm sorry, the approval conditioned on the county attorney's approval as to form.
So we're taking that off the agenda?
No, it just when the approval would just be conditional on the county attorney as to form.
Yeah. Do we need to make an amendment, or is that sufficient?
I think as long as I read it that way in the record, it should be fine.
Okay.
And I know Karen, we've talked about this, and Stephanie have talked about this. Yeah.
Well, Commissioner Kavesi, I would like to move consent item 6.1 for discussion. So.
Okay.
Okay, so move 6.1 to 7.0. All right. Anything else, Commissioner Kavesi?
No.
Okay, Commissioner Meyer.
Just an announcement.
Okay. Commissioner Olson.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Jacob.
Nothing for me.
Okay, all right. All right, moving on then. Motion for the agenda as amended.
Commissioner Meyer will vote to approve the agenda as modified.
Commissioner Kavesi, second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Kavesi to approve the amended agenda as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. So approved by all approving aye. Mr. Fritz, if you would read the other items into the record, please.
All right, no problem. All right, consent business. 6.1's been pulled for further discussion. 6.2, approve resolution and memorandum of understanding with Wabasha County Substance Abuse Court. 6.3, approve resolution providing monetary relief on liquor licenses. 6.4, approve monthly resolution. 6.5, approve Southeast Regional Crisis Center governance agreement. 6.6, regulatory flexibility. 6.7, confirm payment of disbursements. That should be the.
Yeah, I have a question on 6. This is Commissioner Kavesi. I have a question on 6.3. Do you want me just to go ahead with it?
Yeah, go, Commissioner.
Okay.
Go ahead with the question. 6.3.
Yeah, this is on the changes for the liquor licenses for bars and restaurants. I didn't know if we have an estimate how much this affects our
Revenue.
Our income. Yeah, our revenue. I don't know how many bars and restaurants and all that. So do we have an estimate? And I mean, I'm still in favor of doing it, but I just wanted to know what the impact is. Nobody knows.
No, I just, this is Sandra, by the way. Oh,
Good morning, Sandra.
quickly. Good morning. Probably
Hear the
less than,
calculator. Yeah.
less than two. I'm sorry. Yeah, you can hear my 10 key in the background. I'm guessing it'll be less than $2,000.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious.
Okay.
Sure. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions? If not, I would need a motion.
Commissioner
move-
Meyer
Yeah.
moves to approve.
Commissioner Kvesi, second, whatever.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Kavesi to approve the consent business as amended and read into the agenda. Any questions? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Approve. Okay, all approved. All aye. I guess if something, last meeting we did do a roll call vote. If something comes up that's of,
Oh, it's
we
true.
can do a roll call vote, but so far everything's been 5-0. Moving on then, 6.1 is the 7.0, approve consolidation of administrative computer system with OpenGov. Mr. Fritz.
Okay, well, I can give you kind of an overview. I'm not sure what Commissioner Kavesky's question was, but this is a move to consolidate most of our financial packages and also the create a new licensing, permit, and inspection system for the planning department. Kay Qualley has been working on that for several months with her staff. She's been working with OpenGov for some time to lay out the vision of what they want that system to be. It's replacing a kind of an ad hoc hodgepodge of different things that they've had over the years, which are very manual and inefficient. So that's that part of it. It will deal with, feedlot inspections, tracking, septic inspections, permitting, and I'm sure, Kay's here on the line and she can, add to that, I'm sure. On the financial side, it's basically all the back of house stuff. So general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, fixed assets, those kind of things. And they're a kind of a very old, disparate kind of system. Most of them are previously based on very old technology and managed by a cooperative of counties that are kind of dominated by the larger counties, and so it's very hard to get things changed or done and that kind of stuff. So that's the idea. We've got a significant amount of money that we spend each year on these different programs and so forth, and consolidating them in this way under OpenGov, which we've used some of their products since 2016, will, number one, create an integrated system, but also save us money in the long run. So, well, actually, right up front.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I just had some questions because I know we've been talking about this for a while. But first of all, I had a hard time finding it on the internet. I mean, on our county website. I finally went to the departments and went to finance, and it's called something else, financial portal or something like that. And then it opens up OpenGov. So I would like, one of the purposes of this is to increase and enhance communication with the citizens. So I would really like to see that option expanded. I think this has a lot of potential, but I don't know, I just want to know clearly that we have plans to do that. The other question I have is, I read through the information. It's pretty extensive. They used all the right words in the right places, but I got a little confused. We're buying the financial package, or we're using the financial package. Are we using the budgeting and planning package also? And then there's the permitting and licensing and code enforcement. So which of those are we actually purchasing or expanding? Yeah. Or
okay, the first item you mentioned was the financial transparency portal. Yes. And that's been on the website since 2016, and actually provides summary financial data for the public. And we've had enough. It's interesting because it's been out there and people actually use it. You know, you might not notice it, but for instance, when we were discussing bond issues, you know, with our financial consultant related to the potential jail project, they had indicated that they had gone out and looked at our financial portal and gotten all the information they needed to provide the basis for their analysis. The same with the bonding agencies. They'd be able to look at it too. And then I've had some individuals, and of course, the press.
Yeah.
One of the things that the package will do for permitting, for instance, is to bring that to an online process. So Kay's vision is to allow people to start the process. In some cases, like if it's a CUP, you can start the process online,
Right.
and then it'll take over, and then the planning department gets involved, and you take it the rest of the way. For things like septic permits and stuff like that, there's, you know, again, an online presence for that. So we'd be expanding that online presence there. To answer your second, so yeah, we're definitely
Well, I have a question about the first one. Is it only under the finance department? I didn't seem to find it
Yes.
on the front
Yes,
page.
it's only under the finance department. We could make it
Well,
more prominent if
yeah,
you
it
like.
probably needs to be a little more prominent because, you know, I went under administration first, and then, you know, it's just like unless you really know what you're doing, which I don't know. Sometimes I wonder about myself. But anyway, you know, and then it was called Financial Transparency Portal, not OpenGov. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, I understand that, but I would like it to have a little more prominence. Do we also use that part of it to generate summaries or reports or updates?
Right. So the part you mentioned, it kind of feeds into the other question you had about what parts do we use. We already use the budgeting portion of it. That's where we get the data that we include in the packet that you get. We use the two systems actually right now, but once we have this integration, it would all be one system. So the detail and the budget part will all be together. We use it for looking at expenses in departments, you know, things like that. So if you know, we can highlight, you know, things that are out of whack, you know, with the budget. So you can then ask about them and why is this expense higher and so forth. It's a visual representation of the same data that's in the financial system. So yeah, we use it for that. I know certain department heads have actually used it for, you know, looking at their operation and where their expenses and revenues are.
Yeah,
so
I'm really focusing, excuse me,
Yeah.
I'm really focusing on the information for the public. When we have those reports, I know, you know, when we do start the budget process in full, you know, full steam ahead, I think we do have those reports on the web, you know, on our website. But, you know, it's just like, there's a lot of potential for people to know more about our finances and our priorities and our processes. So, you know, it seems like, I don't know if the public needs monthly updates on the budget or, you know, but it just seems like we should be doing more with the data. Okay, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Excuse me.
Yeah. So there are monthly reports out there that the public can actually go out there and see the monthly financial situation. They can drill down. Maybe it's a matter of more PR, you know, for it, that it's there and people can look at it. You know, websites are hard because we'd like to have everything on the front page, but there's only so much, you know, so much room. So, so maybe, but elevating it a little bit, you know, might be helpful to so people know it's there and they can see it. You can actually see the revenues and expenses by month, by fund, by department, and by individual areas of expense. The other question you had was on what parts are we getting. The way they market this particular product is for the financial side, it's a suite of financials. So you get the whole financial whether we use them or not. It's just the way they do it. So, but we already use budgeting. Accounts payable is something that we would use, accounts receivable, fixed assets.
Right.
We'd like to get into the workforce planning aspect, which feeds the budget. And I'm trying to think if there's any other ones in the financial side. The general ledger, of course, is the backbone.
Right. Yeah, and that looked very standard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. then I did have some questions about the budget, and I'm just being particularly cautious on any of our expenses because our budget is a little bit different this year with different expenses and different revenue streams. I see on page 73 we have the billing table, and we've got some escalating prices there by year. This is what we will owe them? Is that this is the cost of those services? Is that?
Yeah, let me just look
billing
at
right
page
here.
73 real quick. Yeah, that's the billing summary. That's exactly right. You
Okay.
should be aware that this information on that summary represents a significant decrease in our budget from year to year. Right now, we have over $200,000 budgeted for this particular group of processes and software that we already have. And by replacing that, we'll actually save this year alone, we'll save $100,000 out of our budget.
Okay, I think that needs to go on OpenGov. Let the people know.
Yeah, I put it in the in the request for board action. It's in there in summary form, but yeah.
Yeah, and then one of the pieces mentioned. Trying to think where it was. It mentioned the use of a consultant. So is that part of their consultant? Is that part of the services? Yeah. And
yeah,
so
it's
you have to buy that.
No, this is all through them. This is a all-inclusive package that what you see there, and the pricing is what we're spending. There's no other consultants or outside people or anything like that.
Okay, I know where it was. It was in the statement of work. Because this is on page 79. It says customer will provide a dedicated, that's us, will provide a dedicated project manager to serve as the primary contact. So are you our project manager, or is Pat Moga, or?
Actually, we have, right now we have two. We have Kay and Pat.
Okay. Oh, because Kay, those are the two departments using the data. Or entering the data too. And then it says further down, the customer will establish teams of appropriate key staff to form the expert teams in key areas. So that's Pat and Kay Qualley.
Yeah, and Kay's actually already done that, and they're actually ahead of the curve. They did. There's a portion in the statement of work that shows a flow chart of how they'd like the workflow to look like in the future, and that's a result of Kay working with the company to lay out that vision. Right now we don't have that, and so they put it in as an example of where we'd be going. But there are a number of those workflows that Kay wants to establish to make things more efficient and to use and leverage the automation that we have, the technology that we have.
And I know when we start to collect data, sometimes it has to be extrapolated from information because we collect it differently. Is that a problem, or are we able to give them, the right data with the right
That's a really good point, because it highlights the fact that a lot of the data right now is in different places. Yes. And in different forms. Part of the process will be to migrate that data into the current, into the new system over in permitting. So in the general ledger, it's a lot easier because it's kind of the same data and it's very similar. But in permitting and inspection area, they have to take a bunch of different data files and bring them into the system and then have them available to use. We have a number of, just hundreds of thousands of documents that tie to the parcels, right. And those are all would be linked then to the new system and accessible through that process. So yeah, so there's a lot of data migration. Fortunately, ours isn't too complicated because we don't have a lot of workflows. So what we're really moving over is just data tables, and so that actually makes it a little easier. So the fact that we're kind of working off of a pretty manual, older-fashioned kind of system makes it actually a little easier to migrate the data rather than trying to migrate it from something that has a complicated workflow.
Okay, and my last question is regarding the staff time to either extrapolate this data or make it in a usable form or whatever. is this, we're not hiring any extra staff, or how, do we have
No.
an estimate on how many hours this is going to take versus how, I know that the planning department has extensive hours already trying to track, all the CUPs and things. But anyway, I just had a question about the staff time.
Yeah, there's no additional staff planned to be hired or added or additional staff. Obviously, when you do any kind of transition like this, the staff have to kind of do two different things at once, and that's pretty typical. So for a period of time, you're working on it, but in the end, you kind of capture that back with the efficiency. So yeah, there's a little more effort that has to go into it over time, and we've done this before in different areas. They basically learn the system as they kind of do their other stuff. So I can't give you an estimated hours, but I know that you work it in as you can, and you try to make sure you can produce what you normally produce, and then at the same time try to get up to speed on the new system. It is taxing, but that's kind of what happens in most integrations, most new stuff like that.
Okay, I appreciate the discussion, just wanted to check on our finances since that's an expense that's outgoing and ongoing. So I'm not sure what the procedure is. I guess Commissioner Kavesi moves.
Okay, but I do have a couple people else that want to speak. So
hold
on. Let's see. I have Commissioner Meyer, I have Commissioner Jacob, and I have Kay Qualley. So let's go with Commissioner Meyer.
I think Commissioner Jacob had his hand up before I did.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Jacob, thank you.
Yeah, so this is something at the Planning Commission level that Kay Qualley has discussed numerous times about how she doesn't have a good system for tracking CUPs and enforcement, and so I did contact our administrator prior to this being on the agenda to see whether the concerns that our planning director has, whether this is going to solve those concerns. And I was assured that he's been working with Kay Qualley to resolve the issues within the planning department. I also asked the administrator, I know we've got prior to moving to our new location, we had a whole row of file cabinets, and I asked him about if this information, much of this information is going to be on the cloud. My understanding is this will make things easier for employees if they turn over or when they turn over, that the information is readily available in a format that they can all access, rather than a file cabinet that one particular employee maybe used extensively, but the rest of the employees might not have been as familiar with. So I think this streamlines things. And I also asked him about the financial implications, and looks like 10 years could save us, the taxpayers, $1 million. So I'm appreciative that the administrator has taken the initiative to come up with this all on his own. This wasn't a directive from us to streamline these functions, add financial efficiencies, and things that will work well and dovetail well together into the future for different employees. So very easy for me to support this.
Okay, Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am fully supportive of this change. I'll say, when I was running, I used that portal extensively, and I actually think maybe it could be more prominent on the website, but it actually provides a lot of great data. You can track 10 years of history. You can see that the government aid has decreased during that. I mean, you can really see a lot if you look at it by department. So it is actually a great tool already. I appreciate that we've got now 3 years of experience on the platform, so we have some ideas about how hard or easy it is to support and how to use it. And I totally get it that an integrated system works better than supporting a bunch of multiple systems that don't necessarily communicate. And just based on my experience in the world of software, it's a reasonable price. So I don't really have any reason not to support this. So I think it seems like a good idea.
Okay, thank you. Kay Qualley's been looking to get in the conversation. Kay, good morning.
And just briefly, and thank you, and good morning, everyone. Commissioner Jacob basically outlined, some of the things that we hope to achieve with this software. Carly McGinty, Frankie, Stephanie Nuttall, Assistant County Attorney, have put in a lot of time trying to look at the workflows. So the one that is in the amendment or the attachment is just one, a feedlot conditional use permit. Obviously with variances, with conditional use permit, interim use permits, we have a lot of other workflows, including economic development, UCC1 filings for loans that need to be renewed every 5 years. And without pawing through files right now, that is really not systematized. So we are really looking forward to, a lot of hard work, blood, sweat, but no tears. So, obviously the attorney's office is going to need to make sure that our data from the real property database is protected, and a lot of other things that they will do subsequent to the potential for this approval. But working with Administrator Fritz and IT staff, Mark Anderson's outstanding staff, we've put in some time. We've got some more time to put in, and we have some staff openings that we're filling. Blake Leah is moving over to Fillmore County, and we had been counting on his help. But Carly McGinty, as I said earlier, is still on board and is going to be working very hard to help in all aspects of it as well. Thank you.
Okay, just a couple of things. A couple of weeks ago, I came across in all the materials that we get an article about OpenGov, and I forwarded it to Administrator Fritz, and we were on the same page. I go forward kicking and screaming and dragging my feet with computer and technology, but I do know it's an important asset. What is the, Commissioner Jacob said 10 years. I don't know that I've ever seen any computers or software have a 10-year life cycle. What is, we spend a lot of money and it's a continual spending and such. So seriously, how long is this going to be good for? I know there's always upgrades and improvements, but.
Yeah, one of the advantages of the environment today is you're buying software as a service, and so built into that are actually, they do releases. They're small releases, but they do them every couple of weeks to improve their products. So unless they come out with a completely kind of new focus that you might want to go and purchase, those products will continue to evolve, and it's built into that software service price.
Okay, so there's not an extra.
No, only when they do like a major change, if they all of a sudden offer some other system, then you might, go to that. But as far as the cloud computing, it's a lot different. It's not based on the hardware anymore. It's not, you're not, worried about whether the hardware is going to get older or newer. Obviously you have to keep up your PCs and all that kind of stuff. But the actual product that we're getting from OpenGov is it just continues to evolve. And actually they're on the cusp of providing the next generation of reporting, so they've had the one reporting system that Chris mentioned, and they're moving to the next generation of reporting actually in the next year. So they're continuing to evolve, and we didn't pay anything extra for that. It's built into that price. You're paying for it, but it's built in. So.
Sure. Well, with the more time at home, I just recently cleaned out one of those file cabinets, and it pained me greatly to throw all that paper away. That was history. That was, stuff that had been worked on. So, but it's gone. I went in the blue bin. Yeah, I understand that we need this stuff in it, but there again, we need to allow the public options, that not everybody's going to be able to use the online. So don't forget to make a paper copy of some type of application, or have some kind of portal that they can come and get help, because again, we all can't do the computer work.
Yeah. This is Commissioner Kavesi. Thank you very much for that explanation. Yeah, I just really wanted to look at how we use it. I'm definitely in favor of it. I just had questions. So thank you, all of you, and Mr. Fritz, for your comments and clarifications. So
now we
can move acceptance.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Kavesi makes a motion to approve the recommendation for the consolidation of the administrative computer system with OpenGov.
Second.
Pending approval from the attorney's office.
Okay, was that Commissioner Jacob that seconded it?
Yes.
Okay, second by Commissioner Jacob. Okay, this one we'll do a roll call because we had quite a discussion. So roll call vote. So motion made by Commissioner Kavesi, seconded by Commissioner Jacob to approve the computer system OpenGov with attorney approval. Commissioner Kavesi,
Commissioner
roll call
Kavesi votes aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Commissioner Meyer votes aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Commissioner Olson votes aye.
Commissioner Jacob.
Jacob, I approve.
Okay, and Commissioner Ward votes aye, so it carries 5-0. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good discussion. We should have put the caveat on there, Karen, though, that you have to negotiate an even lower price.
Good luck with that.
Well,
Yeah.
we've got a good attorney who has excellent skills in computer
Computer.
software agreement negotiation.
I want contract negotiations.
Well, this is contract negotiations, and she's
Yes.
on the MCCC board, so there you go.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, thank you. All right, moving on to 7.1, receive presentation on deer management action plan. And I saw Mr. Forsberg earlier. Froberg. I'm sorry, apologize. Are you there?
I am. Sorry, I was getting unmuted. Froberg, yeah. So I'm Todd Froberg. I'm the landowner assistant specialist for southeastern Minnesota and the big game program of the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. And I'm giving you guys an update on the agency culling phase since we did CWD management on the county land. And we'll see how this works. So good morning, commissioners. I guess this is my first virtual county commissioner meeting, so new for me. But anyway, we can, I guess, go to page 2.
Okay.
So I guess just quick how we got to the agency culling phase. 2019 was our first expanded effort in southeastern Minnesota. The red areas are the CWD management zone and the yellow is a CWD control zone, but we had over 12,000 samples from hunter harvested deer during the 2019 hunts, and it was mandatory testing. And as you can see, there's pretty good distribution of where the samples came from. So we have a good grasp of where the disease is and the prevalence of the disease. And then also in 2019, there was special hunts the last 2 weekends in December, and that generated 570 samples. And those are in the DPAs of known disease. And that just gives hunters a little bit of extra opportunity. So page 3. And this map shows currently where our CWD positives are. And as you can see, they're centered around the Preston area and then over closer to Watoka. And then we can go to page 4. So based on where those CWD positives are, this determines where we are doing active management and agency culling. So our agency culling phase was from January 13th to March 20th. There was 463 deer culled, 215 on the Preston side, 248 on the Winona side. We have been culling deer on the Preston side for 3 years now, and this was our first full year on the Winona side. We did a couple weeks last year, but that was strictly focused around Cedar Valley. We shot 7 positives with 1 found dead, that blue square over on the Preston side, and that was on our participating landowner's property. The USDA sharpshooters found it while they were cleaning up baits. So, and we did end a week and a half early due to COVID-19. And then all deer that were harvested during this were donated to the public. So, and that was through partnerships with Minnesota Deer Hunters Association, the Bluff Country chapters, and then Bluffland Whitetail Association. I give them the deer and they call members of the public and distribute it. So page 5, please. So a little closer view on the Winona side, and just for reference, these.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Technology. You keep saying Winona side. Is it side or site, or what do you mean when you say Winona side?
Winona side, I guess. Sorry, it's I guess our two sides, our two areas of focus are Winona and then Preston. So when I say the sides, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Excuse me. So a little closer dive on the Winona side. The brown circles are called deer, and they are randomized within that section just to protect, I guess, landowner privacy. Just so someone doesn't know specifically where they're being called. So, but anyways, there were 248 deer, as we said, called on the Winona side, 98 males and 157 females, and those are how it breaks out with age. We did have 3 positives. Those are the yellow hexagons. As you can see, those were, again, closer over to Cedar Valley and Pleasant Valley. And overall, we had pretty good access to private property in general. I would say on the Winona side, we had better access than we did on the Preston side. So there were a lot of landowners who were receptive to CWD management on their property. And overall, high number of deer. We saw a lot of deer. The Winona side is a little bit different than the Preston side. Of course, a lot of the roads and access points are high on ridges, so it's not as conducive to some of the methods that USDA uses to call deer, which is mobile, so using vehicles, but it's not safe. So more of that calling opportunity takes place stationary and blind. So makes the work a little bit difficult, but still successful. Page 6, please. And then specifically on the county property, USDA was calling deer from February 24th to March 20th. There were 22 deer called. And again, 8 males and 14 females, and that's the age breakdowns. And we did not find any positives on the county property.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Commissioner Kavesi, this graph does show 2 red circles. Are those?
Correct. So those are over kind of in the other core area.
We're just talking about on the left.
Yep. So
Okay.
the Winona property is highlighted in green there.
Oh, okay. Okay, I see. So we're really only talking about the green section.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And again, those, if you were to count the brown circles, there's not 22 of them in the county property, is because they're randomized within that section. So page 7, please. So then I guess what's next in Winona County? With CWD management, we would like to keep sustained efforts. Our goal is to keep prevalence low and contain and minimize spread. And ultimately, we are still above goal for deer populations in southeastern Minnesota. So keeping these management expectations in place is going to help us get more towards goal. So continue to monitor CWD with surveillance stations and CWD testing. So that likely will reflect a lot of what happened last year. Some mandatory testing, widespread testing. So I think it's a great option for hunters to be able to get their deer sampled. I know I greatly appreciate being able to get my deer sampled with young kids and knowing that my meat is likely or not detected with CWD. So the regulations will be similar to last year. That would be like the $3, the $1 per season. unlimited antlerless and some of that stuff. That it will include some of the, which are deer house meetings, of course, were put on hold or just online. So that's where that public input will be. And then the DNR managers within the areas input, and then of course the DNR big game program input. So that will produce the regulations, and then the data drives action. So where we have CWD positives will determine where extra effort will be focused, or if the area needs to expand. And then I know at the last county meeting, there was questions of whether this needed to happen, or the agency culling, or if it could be a public hunt. So I just wanted to bring that to your guys' attention. And if that's something that you guys would like to discuss, or I guess have facilitated, I'm willing to help out with that, whether that's during the archery season or firearms. I know there's other uses for the county land and the park, so I don't know if that's the best case, but I know it was brought up last time, so I figured I'd bring it up again. But I'm willing to help facilitate that in whatever way you guys see feasible. Page 8, please. So, and then just to end this, I guess, if what can you do to help with CWD? So if you're a hunter, keep hunting. That's the most important thing. That's the only way we can manage deer populations. Abide by the rules. So get your deer tested, abide by the carcass, scent, bait, attractant, feeding restrictions. It just helps the spread of CWD, stop the spread of CWD. Process your own deer if you're able to, or request that it's handled separately. Keep your processed deer separate. Don't add them if you're hunting in a group, don't add them all together. It's happened in the past. 2 years ago, there was a group that was 13 of them were hunting, and they shot a CWD positive deer. They had all their deer together, and they ended up throwing all their deer out because they didn't know which one was which. And then plan ahead for both the carcass and testing. There's a lot of bad information out there, so educate yourself with credible sources, and then overall stay involved. So, and then page 9. And if you're not a hunter, so please don't recreationally feed deer. It's illegal. There's a recreational feeding ban, and then ultimately, especially in southeastern Minnesota, deer don't eat it, and the risk is too high. And then feed birds responsibly. So the 6 feet rule with bird feeders, or if you have lots of deer visiting your bird feeders, potentially take them in at night, depending on what you're comfortable with, I guess. And then again, as always, educate yourself with credible sources. And then if you're comfortable, maybe allow hunting on your property to take some extra deer, and then report sick deer. And as always, stay involved. So, and then 10. So that is it. I can take any questions if you guys have any.
This is Commissioner Kavesi. I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm not recreationally feeding them, but they are coming to eat my daylilies. So this is ultimately going to reduce the population. I feel like I could invite people to hunt on my property, except I'm in town. So we have a regular crew that seems to just really enjoy that fresh green when they come out. So thank you for your presentation.
Yep, thank you. And yeah, I mean, some of that is just deer are habituated, so it's some of that's pretty tough to minimize. So, and they like to eat nearly everything, especially that's green. So some of it's unavoidable.
Yeah. So I have a question. We had given permission for the DNR to take deer off the county property, and you gave a duration of time for that. That's already expired, right? And so during this presentation, are you asking for permission to take deer on county property again, or where are we at with that?
No, I think we can revisit that next year. Like I said, we'll kind of see where the data goes. If there's some more CWD positives in the area, then we can revisit it at that point.
Yeah, I guess that's where I had quite a few constituents reach out to me. Is if we do that again, I think there's people within the community who want to be part of that discussion. They felt like the county board maybe move forward without vetting it quite long enough. I mean, it came before the board, we voted on it. I think they would have liked to have seen 1 or 2 week delay between the presentation and when we actually voted, so they could come in and give their thoughts and opinions on using county land for taking deer. But at this point, it doesn't look like you're asking for that. You're just giving a presentation. So
Yep, just an update, and
appreciate it.
we can change whatever way possible or whatever way feasible to facilitate that discussion if that's the case for next year.
Okay.
Any other questions? I had Todd, thank you. I specifically asked you for a report, so I do thank you for coming in with this. The CWD, so what is the DNR? I've been asked by a citizen, what is the DNR budget for CWD? Do you have a line item, and what did it cost to hunt these 20-some deer up on the landfill park?
Well,
property?
so for the agency culling phase specifically, there was a $300,000 allocated for that effort. I'm not 100% sure on what the overall budget is for CWD, but that comes out of our Servant Health account fund. It's 50 cents per every deer license goes into that account. And then there was also general money that was allocated, general fund money that was allocated towards CWD. And I don't know where that sits in the legislature this year, but I would imagine just the attention that CWD is getting both state and then nationally, that there will be state money and also potentially national. There was national funds last year, but I think it was like $2 million nationally, so it was very minimal across 50 states, of course. So there will likely be national funds again this year, but I do not know what that is as of this point.
Okay. And another concern this constituent had is that this meat, when you shot and killed these people, it probably wasn't the highest quality. It wasn't prime A, plus meat. And did it go to food shelves, or did it just go to individual citizens that requested it?
So we have a sign up sheet on the website where people were able to sign up to receive venison, and that was distributed that way through Minnesota Deer Hunters Association and Buffalo Whitetails. And then on the quality, you can definitely, they actually have a little bit of a different smell that time of year. And then just the appearance actually has got kind of a more of a different sheen on it than with the meat. But to be honest, we've never really had a complaint on meat quality. I guess I think it maybe looks and smells a little bit different, but I guess tastes the same.
He referenced, and I would agree with him, you wouldn't go out and eat a sick cow, or if you're trying to look for prime meat, you probably wouldn't be hunting at that time of year because it's the end of the winter. They're stressed. They're maybe ready to give birth, and there's a lot of factors that would go into the quality of meat. So he was concerned about that. One other thing, you mentioned that you had high landowner participation. There's a lot of love-hate relationships with the DNR. Unfortunately, you're well aware of that. When you get permission, their point was that one neighbor controlled the whole valley. One neighbor gives permission on their property for DNR to come in and do something, but it really does affect the neighborhood. So do you reach out to the neighborhood, like so many miles around that property owner that's given permission, or is it just you get their permission and it's okay?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's aware of, I guess, what was going on due to, I guess, outreach efforts. So I sent a letter to everybody within the 3 miles of where we were focusing. So they did have that letter. They were aware.
Okay.
But if somebody gives access to their, I guess, private land, unless there's a reason, like if there's another house on the neighboring property that's close, or there's something of that sort, then we would check with the neighbor. If the neighbor's not okay with it, then we would avoid that property.
Okay.
But if there's 200 acres and there's not a worry for safety or anything like that, or the neighbors getting startled or something, then we don't definitely just notify the neighbor that we're on there, and that's also due to landowner privacy.
Right. So you use a 3-mile factor to notify people.
Yep.
Radius. Okay. All right. Well, I'll echo Commissioner Jacobs' citizen concerns. If we're going to do this again, we maybe need to have some citizen input to guide any processes that we might agree to in the future. So thank you very much for the report. Any other questions from anybody? Seeing nobody's hand go up. Thank you very much, Todd. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. 7.2, discuss effects of COVID-19 on jail design and planning process. Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, so I had asked to put this on as a future agenda item. I have some concerns about how this COVID crisis is maybe going to affect how the Department of Corrections will deal with jail populations in the future. I mean, it became clear that we don't want a dense population close together. I'm wondering whether they're going to potentially eliminate like double bunks in a cell. I'm wondering whether they're going to change what the guidelines or what the requirements are to have a compliant jail. So I think one of my main concerns is that we're going to build this jail that we've been planning for the last few years, and the DOC is going to come along and say, sorry, new standards, you're out of compliance, just like we were in 1979. We built a brand new jail and standards changed the next year. We knew that was coming. I think it would be foolish for us to not reevaluate at this time and see if we can figure out, have some communications with the Department of Corrections, find out where things are going to go in the future. I'm also noticing that when needed, we can have far less inmates in jail than what we have in the past. So I'm looking at Southeast Minnesota combined. I think Houston has 8. I don't know if we have 8 or 10, and Wabasha has 6. We're looking at like 18 inmates housed with a capacity of 180. We're only using 10% of our capacity. And I don't know, I'm guessing that, I'm just speculating that the future is going to be much more corrections and diversions and ankle bracelets. And then now with the Wabasha County Jail talking about potentially closing, they might be willing to make some kind of way better deal than what they've offered in the past. I feel like this issue, I think we should be readdressing it before we've spent a lot of money on planning, and I understand all that, but I think we're going to have a new normal with this COVID crisis having reared its head, and I feel like the taxpayers they're possibly going to not be happy if we just continue to move forward without reevaluating the new norm that we're living in. So those are really a few of my concerns, and that's why I asked to have this as a future agenda item. And I don't know if anyone else has any concerns with.
Yeah, Commissioner Olson, I see you have your hand up. Commissioner Olson.
I do know the topic has come up regarding the Houston County Jail. I think Karen had addressed some concerns expressed by some professors and whatnot. So, from the time the Winona County Jail was built and now, this is a relatively new facility here. The air exchanges and airflow in the cell blocks and the day rooms has all, been changed quite a bit for good air quality. We have a negative airflow in the units, so the air is changed. The air in the cells directly exits the cell and out the building. Fresh air is provided. So I don't know about the double bunk thing. We could certainly ask them. But the design, the current design for the health and safety of the occupants is pretty well covered.
Okay. I see Sheriff Ganrud looking in. Any conversation or any guidance from your perspective?
Well, sure. I think that's a good idea. We can check with Department of Corrections and see if they have anything, but I think this is too early for them to tell us much of any plans on changing things. Our numbers are up a little bit in the since last weekend. More arrests have been made, people brought into jail, and the judges held the people this weekend. That was part of the reason that we had lower numbers. So, we still have to do our job, and we still have to have a place to put the inmates that we really need to hold on to. But again, we can certainly do what Commissioner Jacobs is asking about and reach out to the USC and see what they'll tell us.
Okay, thank you. Karen Sonneman, I see you have your hand up. Karen?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think what Commissioner Jacob has brought up is a good idea to revisit this. The board did create the Jail Design and Construction Committee, which includes 2 board members. And it includes Justin Green, who is the Jail and Jail Alternatives Chair of CJCC, and he was the chair of the Jail Study Committee. So I think this is a good issue to bring to the Jail Design and Construction Committee to talk about what's happening now with COVID, what may be anticipated. Nobody knows what's going to happen, but I think everybody is looking at a new normal. And I don't foresee that, well, first of all, we also have a lot of diversion programs now. Whether we can add more, that's something to discuss as well. And CJCC, we look at those all the time, look at improving what we have and adding new things. So I would recommend that this discussion go to the Jail Design and Construction Committee, which has been, again, formed. We haven't signed any contracts yet with the architect or the construction company. I would not recommend stopping the process completely, but working with looking at what kind of design is going to be functional in the new world of how do we address future pandemics. But and it's a good question too, Commissioner Jacob, that you brought up about, well, if we're letting people out now, why can't we do it later? There are reasons why we're doing it now that may not exist when we're over, whenever that happens, COVID. But and as Ron said, there was more people in jail this weekend. Monday we had more people in custody than we've had for a while. So people continue to commit crimes. There's a group who some of the folks who we see a lot of still come back, and there are people who just defy even the governor's orders, and but I think it's a good question to put before the Jail Design and Construction Committee, particularly because we have 2 commissioners on that, and those 2 can join in the discussion of this, which is, an important subject.
Thank you. Commissioner Kavesi. You had your hand up. Commissioner Kavesi.
You're muted.
Sorry, I agree with the discussion so far. I appreciate, all of these points being raised. I was wondering if it was going to be possible, or if it is possible, to collect any statistics on the behaviors of the people who have recently been released under different security options. We do have, or we have had, an increase in child abuse calls or abuse calls, domestic abuse, and an increase of calls on mental health. But, I don't know if these are the people that have been, if they do commit any kind of an issue while they're released, obviously that would be grounds for putting them back into the system. But I just, I think when we do have this discussion through the Design and Construction Committee, we probably, if we could, have some indication of how everybody who was released has been behaving, just in general. Thank you.
Commissioner Jacob.
I'm gonna, I understand we've got the committee to work on this, but they're also gonna need ideas, thoughts, and directions from the county board, because ultimately we're the ones who will vote on what's approved or what plans move forward from the county. And at this point, personally, I think we should be, I'm still in agreement that we need a jail. I wouldn't say that. I don't feel like transporting everybody to Wabasha or Houston would make sense, but I seriously question the size. I feel like I'd like to see something explored, like perhaps building a 25-bed facility, and then with any overflow beyond that, going into neighboring counties. I think that's something that I'm pretty sure I could support regardless, but talking about 78 to 98, pushing 100 beds, I just feel like that's probably not where the future's going, and I think we need to have some kind of specific parameters for this committee to look at and bring back to us. So I would propose that we have the existing work done, and we compare that to what would it look like if we proposed something like a 25-bed facility. So then you got people coming in on the weekend, and our law enforcement center still has a jail to work out of, and potentially these numbers could be either lower, or we could figure out how to keep them lower, just like we're doing now. I mean, the proof is in the pudding that when we don't have that many people housed now, so there's some reason that we're able to make that happen. I mean, maybe we need to look at that more in the future than simply trying to fill whatever capacity we build.
Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple things. I think that's the issue that Commissioner Jacob raises is interesting and important, and so I certainly do support at least asking those questions. And I think that the county attorney's idea of how to proceed with those, that makes sense to me, and I'd be in favor of that. I have concerns about doing any kind of a delay, and I am thinking back to the meeting that we had with the Department of Transportation, the Department of Corrections, and our representative and senator, where we talked about potentially delaying because of the issues with the property. And what I heard the Department of Corrections say to us at that meeting was that when the annex was built, there was an understanding that that would be good for 8 years. We've gone far beyond that now. And so they were reluctant, if we didn't move forward with our plans, to grant us an extension, thinking that we would simply delay as we have for quite a number of years. So while I think it's great to ask that question, we have this, I think the answer came back that we had a 7-month period for the Department of Transportation to look at that issue regarding the properties. So I don't see why we can't use some of that time to at least ask those questions. As far as the suggestion that we should give direction to go for 25 beds, I don't really see how that's supported by any evidence. And while it's true that things may change, and we can certainly ask that question, I think we're kind of in dangerous territory to just throw all of the information that we've already worked on out and look at something. When I was running for office, I went to the meeting at the particular where the Jail Advisory Committee went through all of the jail diversion programs. And of the more than dozen programs, we're already doing all of those. And so I don't think that conditions that we choose to operate in a pandemic and an emergency justifies deciding to operate at that level of incarceration on an ongoing basis. So while I think these are great questions to ask, I don't really think there's enough information yet to make that sort of a recommendation. So I feel like, you know, let's ask that question, but let's stay the course for the decisions that we've made. That's really how I feel about it right at this point.
Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah. Yeah, I certainly respect all those thoughts and where you're at. I guess I'm at a different place in what I can support with my vote moving forward. I don't think we should throw out any of the work that's been done. It's been great work, and we have it there to compare. I just feel that we should maybe be looking at comparing it to something that could be a new norm. So I feel like we've got that information. It's good information. Let's compare that to something. We've got also a lot of new information. We've got an experiment just to the county, to the north of us here. Let's not just ignore that Wabasha County built a facility similar to what we're proposing 10 years ago, and it's failed, and they're having to actually close it. So that information combined with not just that it failed, is it potential that we can use any part of it or rent part of it or staff it? I don't know. If it's sitting there empty and we only need 25 inmates coming and going regularly from our courthouse and the transportation is minimal to get to a facility close by, I don't think we should ignore all that. And I'm just saying that my support for even 78 beds is dwindling. And, you know, we were talking about trying to support more than that. So, and I don't have any concerns with the timetable. Worst case scenario is, yeah, we could be completely sunsetted and shut down. And I understand it would be inefficient if we had to go 12 months or 18 months transporting all of our inmates out. And we're trying to avoid that. And I can understand that. But to make a $21 million mistake to avoid 12 months of transport, that I can't justify that with a taxpayer. We need to make the right decision. We need to find out what the future is going to hold, what the DOC is going to approve into the future, and do the right thing for the taxpayer as well as the community as a whole with the needs of the law enforcement center and jail. So I just differ on opinion.
If I could add in a couple things. Commissioner Meyer brought up the annex. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Meyer, you had your hand up. I'm sorry. I apologize.
And thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to respond directly after Commissioner Jacob before I forget anything that I might have been thinking of. So I think that it's possibly a mischaracterization about saying that what we're going to build is like the Wabasha jail, because it's my understanding that they also built offices and courthouse space, and that's not something that we're doing. We're really going bare bones in the first place. So I don't know that that's in my mind anyway, I'm not sure that that's a direct comparison, although I certainly take your point. The other thinking that I have here is that there was a lot of research that was done. If we don't have any facility, like the do nothing option that was in the report that we saw, then that means that we don't have anywhere to assess prisoners in that first 72-hour period to determine the risk that they pose. And that this meant that there was a drastic increase in the cost of transportation because we can't just use a transportation officer, we have to have licensed peace officers. So this idea that we could just do nothing for a year and rent space at the Houston County Jail, it isn't a wash. I think it's a more complicated issue than that. So I understand that, that you favor lower taxes and that you don't want to waste taxpayer money. I know that that's one of the, kind of one of your foundational values. And I really respect that. I think though that when I was door knocking, what I heard from my constituents and the community is that we should have acted before this, and that it really is time for the county to go ahead and do what they need to do. So while as I said before, I'm not opposed to exploring this idea as we move forward, but I really think we need to move forward and not pull back at this point. I just see that as a kind of based on this idea of low taxes and not really what's best for the county or the community.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Well, a couple observations. Commissioner Meyer, you brought up the annex. You know what? I was part of the decision to build that annex, and I don't know that that annex has caused any problems. I think it's been a real asset to our organization, and it's still working. And for some reason, the DOC doesn't really like it, but I don't think they can put their finger on and tell me that it's a problem. So again, even in design and construction, I would like to see something of that nature. So, and DOC keeps bringing up the risk. In my conversations with MCIT and other counties and other AMC people, the counties are assuming all the risk. The Department of Corrections doesn't have any risk. Somebody gets hurt in our jail, they're gonna challenge us. They don't challenge DOC. So their amount of risk in allowing this or not allowing this is a little concerning to me, that they seem to implicate that they have skin in the game, and I don't know. I think their skin is much less than ours. And then when I did go up to testify with Representative Plowski to try and get that money, I was amazed at the legislators' attitude and wanting to proceed with a regionalization again of corrections. And I think that topic is coming back up, and it might be even stronger moving forward with this COVID idea, and how we're allowed to build or not build, or what we do with prisoners. But in particular, and I apologize, I don't remember her name, of the committee, she was very much for why aren't you regionalizing these facilities? And of course, with 5 minutes of testimony time, we couldn't get into that discussion. But I think there's some serious discussions to be had. I think we need to maybe we have asked DOC to come talk to the jail, the committee that we have formed. We have not formally met to really get a feel of where we're going with this. We know it's unknown, and as Commissioner Jacob says, we've done a lot of things. Can we continue the video conferencing with the arraignments and using that? And there's just a lot more on the table now than what, it's not business as usual, it's business as unusual. So I do have sentiments that I think we could go smaller. The guts of the building cost pretty much the same. I mean, you can almost Google what's so many bed jail costs you anymore, with all the information on construction costs and everything. So I think that's more easily to obtain that information than it was before. So I guess maybe we let the committee do some more work, knowing this discussion happened. Commissioner Meyer and myself are on the committee, sheriff, attorney, all on the committee. You heard the conversation. And so I'm not sure, Commissioner Jacob, do you have a specific action?
Well, yes, I'd like to see, I think we should have brought forward to the county board and the committee, what's been the change in transportation costs over the last during this crisis. If we were at the number of inmates that we're at currently, and we had to transport like we're having to transport now, I think we've got the information that it would take to make different predictions and calculations into the future. We know what we're spending now. We know what a smaller facility would cost us to build, and we know we can use the numbers, and we can use our past experience between when we were transporting more inmates compared to what we're transporting now, and how that all would enter into the equation of what size facility makes the most sense, or potentially like Wabasha, we don't want to make a big mistake and overbuild for a future that doesn't exist. So
Sheriff Ganrud, I see your hand up. Sheriff.
Yeah, I would just like to echo again that this pandemic has been, what, weeks, couple of months at the most. But we can't base our future upon just a short period of time like that. No one knows what's going to happen. Is this going to be, again, we're starting to arrest more people because they need to be arrested for committing serious crimes. For a while there, everything was quiet. We weren't having any calls. We were simply out on patrol, but the call volume's going up. The serious calls are going up. The one on the police department's busy making it. So I don't know what the new norm is going to be, but I wouldn't want to base such a short period of time on our future. Thank you.
Commissioner Meyer.
I just want to clarify, I don't think that I'm on the committee.
Oh, is it?
Commissioner Kovesi's on the committee.
Okay, all right. Yes, I think you're right. Marie, are you on the committee?
Yes, that was my point.
Okay.
Just make sure we're all clear on that. And we
All right.
haven't met yet, but I think this is good discussion. And, if we could have a little more data, which the sheriff was just talking about, the serious calls going up during this time, I think we'd have a little more meat to be talking about this. But that's the business of the committee, which is still coming. So thank you.
Well, looking very quickly at the jail roster, why are we having more burglaries? Everybody's home. Nobody should be breaking in and burglarizing. We're all home. It's when you go back to work that the burglars come out, isn't it? Something's going on there. We need to get the country back to work, though, anyway. So Commissioner Jacob, anything more specific or?
Well, do you feel like we have a consensus that we want to do some reevaluating, or do you think we should have a motion that we can vote up or down to have the committee and the county board look at new information with regards to what the DOC potentially could be changing? I understand that could be a long delay, but just as I stated right off the bat, very concerned that the DOC is going to change standards, and we're going to be in the same boat we were in 1979, build a new facility, and they change the standards because of it keeping people more distant. And here we are with an out of compliance facility. I feel like that needs to be looked at. I feel like understanding how these different numbers are affecting our transportation and what we could get by with, I'm much more inclined to vote for supporting a smaller size facility than a larger one. Do you think that there needs to be a motion there? Or do you feel like we have a consensus to evaluate some of that through the committee and the county board?
How about we direct the committee to have I'd say a face-to-face meeting with Department of Corrections staff to hear where what they're learning, if they're proposing anything, are they having these discussions? And then we come back to the whole county board and have a pointed discussion.
It seems like a good idea.
Any other comments? So do you feel that you would want to make that a motion? Commissioner Meyer? I can't hear you, Commissioner Meyer.
I know you can't. Sorry about that. So I am really not in favor of a motion that is designed to delay the process. So I'm happy to support asking of the questions, but I don't think that that should delay any of the work that the committee is going to move forward with, because I think that there's enough time. But if the Department of Corrections doesn't have an answer, then we should choose to delay our project until they have an answer. That's certainly not a decision that I support.
I don't feel like I'm trying to specifically delay the process. My intent is to spend the money, the taxpayers' money wisely, and make sure that, you know, if it were delayed by 12 months or 18 months, you know, that would be sad. But if it meant that we build a facility that's much more in compliance and there is a new norm, I would feel better about that than to just go ahead and spend the money. So I don't feel like it's not an intent to deny and delay. It's an intent to get the right information in a new scenario and a new norm.
Commissioner Meyer?
Yeah, you have favored a smaller jail all along, and now, Commissioner Jacob, you're suggesting that we need an even smaller jail of only 25, and I don't really think there's evidence to support that. So while I am, of course, interested in spending the taxpayer money wisely, it's going to cost us more if we do nothing for a year and our jail is condemned, and then we're having to transport with multiple officers because we don't even have a holding cell to assess the risk of prisoners. And so that, to me, is a waste of taxpayer money. So while I'm not opposed to exploring the question, I am opposed to delaying, because that delay also will cost significant amounts of money.
Commissioner Kavesi? Commissioner Kavesi, you had your hand up.
You are muted.
Sorry. I just wanted to say I agree. The discussion so far has gone pretty well. I do not want to delay the process. I think we have significant information for the committee to discuss. I don't believe there's enough evidence to go with something as small as the 25-bed option, you know, as a 25-bed option. I think the trends are even coming out now where more people are committing crimes and even robberies. You're right, Commissioner Ward, you know, that's pretty bold. But I think the committee, I agree with Attorney Sonneman's recommendation that this information be passed to the committee, and I think the committee will be discussing, you know, any options that DOC might have. That's a new piece of information, and we can add it to, you know, the discussion. And again, you know, look at the new inmate data and also the data for people who have been released under different conditions. We may not have the same options. We may not have video conferencing available outside of an epidemic situation, because that was not an option before, you know, necessarily before the state opened that up during this time. So we have the options of our diversion courts, and those are working constantly in the background to reduce our inmate population. And we have been discussing adding a family diversion court, and I think we need to go forward with the diversion court options, because not only do they reduce the jail population, they also ultimately provide a process for people to change the quality of their life if they stay in the program and manage the conditions that are set for them or with them. So I think those are the options, and the committee, you know, this is good input for the committee. I don't see the committee you know, when we formed the committee, we said it would not be a dictatorial kind of thing where the committee discusses things and then comes back to the board and says, here's your options. The committee will be discussing things and bringing that back for discussion, not just say, here's your options, you know, or whatever. So this is an ongoing discussion, and I think, you know, some of the points raised have been very interesting. I do not want to waste taxpayers' money with during any time of going without a jail, and that's unpredictable. That's out of our hands whether DOC is going to adjust that ultimatum of a date that we're looking at. So I think we need to proceed and bring ourselves together as a committee and talk about these things. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, none of what I've stated has been an intent to delay the process. I'm just saying we're in a different scenario than we were 3 months ago, and for us to ignore it, I think is foolish. We've got new information, things have been done differently. I'd like to take that all into consideration. I don't have the anxiety that other commissioners do about if this delayed the process. I understand you want to make sure the process doesn't get delayed in any way. I can respect that. I'd like the information all looked into, and I want to make the best decision we can for the taxpayers and the community and the safety of the community. I want to make the best decision as we can moving forward. So if you feel like we need a motion, I can make it a motion.
I think
we've got a consensus and a directive for the committee and the board to look at from our discussion here.
And I've got, Commissioner Olson has his hand up.
Yeah, a lot of the information is that you've asked for, Steve, is it's good to know, and we already probably have it. We know what the transportation costs are. What would be interesting to know is the staffing level. If we had a 25-bed facility, the staffing levels stay the same. Ultimately, our long-term costs are going to be staffing the jail, as Wabasha has found out. And their design is staff intensive versus a different design facility. But I think Ron could give us those transportation numbers. We know what they were. We know what they are if we have no facility, because that was already looked at. The transportation costs are going to be a ongoing cost, and it's not going to be a fixed cost. It's going to be inflation. But a lot of that information we should have. What we don't have is the DOC crystal ball, and that's a good question to ask them if they are looking at different design functions.
Sure. And the reason I asked about transportation is because we do have a different set of transportation costs than what we had 3 months ago. What I'm asking for is, what has the transportation costs been in the last couple months with the reduced jail populations? And if reduced jail populations are somehow in the bigger picture of the DOC's grand plan, we really have 2 sets of transportation now, where we were prior to COVID and where we are now. And if we can, through diversions and corrections, if we can keep the population low, that makes a completely different equation. So we haven't looked at the numbers with the lower transportation that we've seen in the last couple months here. So I feel like there is a new set of numbers that we haven't looked at.
Okay, I see Officer Buswell. Do you have something to contribute? Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I appreciate your time. Hey, I heard the commissioners discuss wondering what was the quote crystal ball from the Minnesota Department of Corrections. So I actually reached out to Tim Thompson during this meeting, and I got a response back that there's nothing at this point at all that they're considering any changes with as far as coming down from the DOC. He also added that that the Minnesota Department of Corrections Inspection Department was going to review next week the complete construction rule revisions. So they've been working on that for quite a few years. The real concept that we had that started with the previous assistance from BKV, all those rules, even the new revisions, were already met into place, just as a theory. I would like to add, even though that there's nothing known, that there is no jail in the state, including the Minnesota Department of Corrections, that could have even been close by past design to handle a pandemic. Being able to double bunk people was impossible, because even with negative pressure systems, what you're doing is COVID was a close quarters combat per se, meaning anybody that was within 6 feet was considered to be in a contamination zone. So what we did here in the jail was quarantined everybody for 14 days. It wasn't isolation, it wasn't punishment, it was quarantine. By our design of the facility, it wasn't necessarily the best place to be with someone with mental illness for 14 days. And where I'm getting at is, I agree with all the commissioners that not only do we need a new jail, but this is a new era. There's no jail that could have handled this pandemic, even if it was open within the last few years. So I think a jail design is going to be different. So the jail design committee is going to come up with a new jail to handle something like this. So people with double bunk beds, they were asking, the DOC was asking for local jails to take people from the DOC. Other jails were dumping people just because they needed to have a single bed space, not a double bed. So I guess to answer the question, the DOC does not have anything in a crystal ball that's saying this is what we're coming up with, but I do believe they're going to have at least an advisement to say this is a better design where you can quarantine and keep people safer for a longer period of time. So I think they're not going to say you can't double bunk, but I think they're going to probably have you that you design a facility to handle your inmates that can be by themselves on the next epidemic or pandemic. Thank you.
Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Buswell, any idea when we could expect that kind of advisement?
Commissioner Meyer, I'm only just responding off of the email that I was given from Tim Thompson, the head of the inspection. And it looks like next week they're going to review those revisions. The revisions are out. You can see them if you go to the Minnesota Department of Corrections website and look up jail revisions. You can see those revisions. The vast majority of them are what's called 2900 rules. Those are the building rules regulations.
Why don't you send us all the link, or somebody send us the link and we can look at that, please.
Do that too. I can send it to Ken and we can go from there.
Thanks, ma'am.
Yep. Okay. Well, you know, this COVID has brought a whole new reflection as to how we're going to all do business, from Main Street to, you know, personal households and jails. So it's brought up more questions that I think the committee really needs to seriously dive in to get more accurate information. And am I right or wrong? Is Tim Thompson scheduled to retire? No?
Is not that I'm aware of, Madam Chair, no.
Okay, because that's one of my biggest fears. The problem is, like, the head of all these state committees are political appointees, and they change, and then the attitude and philosophy and rules change. That gets a slippery slope. So okay, so I think what I heard is that we really would like to have a face-to-face maybe the jail committee have a face-to-face conversation with some DOC people, and try and come up with a list of questions that we want answers from them, or at least get them to consider, and keep the committee involved with them. Is that what I'm hearing? And if Commissioner Jacob or any commissioner could come up with questions, we can put those in writing and submit to Administrator Fritz so we can have a list. Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, I would love that. I would favor that over a formal motion.
Okay. Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, and I had a question on your wording. You said we could have a face-to-face meeting. Are you talking about the board or the design committee?
I guess I would start with the design committee. Would that be agreeable?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Administrator Fritz.
All right, so part of this process, the way I kind of listened and observed what the board's trying to come up with, is getting more information not only from the DOC, but on possible design standards that could be used to, deal with the pandemic, whether it's negative pressure or options for double bunking or not double bunking or what you do in a pandemic. We're going to continue, if we continue forward, when the committee meets, we still need resources to answer a lot of those questions. Whatever you do translates into funding, money. So we're planning on bringing the architect contract and the construction manager contract forward. We have one little piece of language left in one of the contracts. And so you'll see those on the county board agenda, most likely at the next board meeting. I just want to make sure that what I understand is we're going to get all these resources together at the committee level, and then do the things you talked about. Ask those questions at DOC, talk about what possible ways we could approach design, and looking at why we let some people out and whether that translates into the future or not. All those kind of things. I guess what I'm trying to point out is we're going to bring these contracts forward. I want you to understand we're still moving in that direction because we need those resources to provide a lot of that information as we go forward.
And these contracts will all be based on either a mid-70s or a mid-90s bed facility, correct?
No, they aren't. They're percentage contracts. So whatever the final the question that was posed was to come up with a design of 78 or 98. That was in the resolution, but the contracts are actually tied to whatever we end up building. So they're a percentage of the gross maximum price. So we can. I think where you're going with that is that if we came up with something smaller, or some other variations, how would that play into it? So this is still in the design phase, the design portion. And no, you wouldn't have to build a 78 or 98. That came from the board. That's the direction. But with this conversation and consensus, it sounds like we have to kind of revisit that issue, at least internally, by asking those questions and seeing what kind of effect they might have on the size of the facility, if any. That's kind of the way I'm understanding that. I mean, we'd still be looking at it. We wouldn't be going out there and saying, do we need a 78 or a 98, because you've got new questions.
We've got new questions. We have, even if it were a 78 or a 98, it could have a significant price impact, because if these each cell has to be further distance, or it can't be a double bunk, or the price for a 78 or a 98 could go up millions of dollars. So for me, and it's just my one vote on a board of 5, is that my support for even a 78 bed facility, given the new norm that we're living in, is I don't think it's there. I think I'm wanting to look at one more option, which would be a much smaller option.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to bring it up, is because I want the board to understand that our original charge as a committee was to look at a 78 and a 98 and bring that back and show you the options. Now, because of these new questions with COVID and that kind of thing, we're going to kind of not do that right away. We have to look at some other questions first. So we've kind of added a little different focus for the start of the committee, because things have changed. So just so everybody's okay with that, that's what I want to, because we're going to bring on the architect, possibly the construction manager, and because we'll need to get numbers from them as we go into and also suggestions. They work with the DOC to figure out, okay, is this something you might consider down the road? And then we can look at the cost impact. They can provide that information. So.
Okay, shall we proceed with that explanation? Is everybody comfortable with that? Go to the committee, work through this. If you got any specific questions, please put them in writing to Administrator Fritz so that they can be, the information can be gathered.
Yeah, I think my specific questions were laid out in this conversation.
All right, just put them in writing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything else for that discussion? I think Administrator Fritz, I think you should have a conversation with WSU President Scott Olson. I think he's got some capacity over there. And he may have it going into the fall or future. We may have a lot more distant learning colleges in all schools. Okay, all right, thank you. Moving on to 7.3, discuss possibility of providing staff direction regarding COVID-19 pandemic. And I think that was Commissioner Kavesi or Commissioner Meyer. Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Meyer.
I know that when I was running for office and I sat at board meetings, and there was kind of the general direction that the county board several years ago gave to our staff was that with respect to health and human services, the county board wanted staff to only do that which was mandated by the state. Because of the pandemic and because of the public health risk that it poses, I really would just like to empower our staff to take whatever measures they need to take to protect the public health and the safety of the citizens of Winona County. And it's really more of a atta boy and atta girl than it is anything else. To know that they're supported in the actions that they take to protect us, whether the state says you have to or not.
This is Commissioner Kavesi. I seconded the motion at the last meeting to discuss this. Yeah, I think what the pandemic has brought out is that there are other options that need to be put into place, whether it's emergency and temporary or ongoing. And I think, the place perhaps for this to be discussed is the Health and Human Services Advisory Committee meeting. Obviously we could review what is our definition of public health and what is our definition of the services that are needed. And some of that comes right from the county health assessment, which we do have data. And some of the things that came out on the last assessment are not necessarily some of our ongoing programs. I consider any changes that our staff might take would be based, first of all, on their direct observations and their direct experiences now. But to me, they are almost similar to the options that we have through our diversion programs for our court. They are early and ongoing input with the team. And this is important. And then they also work with the team. The client works with a team approach. And we have found that the diversion programs change people's lives. They become tax-paying citizens. Their families are reunited. All of those kind of intangible changes, not only keeping people out of jail. So I think the place perhaps to discuss this would be under the Health and Human Services Committee, to consider if any additional options have come open because of their current experiences.
Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, so I would have a question. Maybe it'd be for administration. And I think what I'm trying to understand is where Commissioner Meyer is coming from. I would hope that all of our county employees already feel empowered and supported When their union contracts come forward, I don't think you've ever seen me vote against any of their contracts. I want to support our employees. I also want to make sure that our citizenry retains the amount of government interaction that it has. So my question for administration would be, is our employees coming forward saying our hands are tied, something needs to be changed in policy? Because if we change policy, I mean, that doesn't just affect the government employees, it affects the citizens' ability and what's been established in the past. All those different pieces weigh against each other. So I don't know. I'm not understanding exactly what Commissioner Meyer is asking, and I'm not understanding if we have a problem.
Well, I think that there may be some the alignment between what you're thinking and what Commissioner Kvesi is thinking is a little different. I think from a staffing standpoint, yeah, we know what our obligations are. Each of the departments, all the department heads, the electeds, everyone knows what their sphere is. They know what the rules are. They know in an emergency, everybody makes adjustments, and you have to sometimes take actions that are appropriate for the emergency. So we've been doing that. But out of the emergency, sometimes things pop up that may need to be discussed for the future. And I think I might be wrong, Commissioner Kvesi, but that's what we've seen in some areas where, and I'll take the one that I've been involved in, the homeless situation. So during the crisis, counties are faced, and we're lucky, we don't have the same size of a problem. We still have a problem, but not the same size of a problem, dealing with homeless during a pandemic. Okay, so other counties have had a real big impact. We still have to deal with it, and that happens during the crisis. We work with other volunteer agencies. We work with HHS. We do whatever was necessary to make sure people are protected. That protects the public health. Okay, ongoing though, when we stick to mandated programs, there hasn't been a lot of interaction in the county to address those issues that come up in the community health assessment or like the homeless situation over time, because that's not a mandated program for the county. So I think there's a certain amount of discussion that could occur, and HHS is probably appropriate for it, to talk about what the county's role should be in some of these things that are outside our normal public health mandate from the state. Typically, our public health mandate is education and prevention. We don't really deal with a few of the other issues that are out there that some people might consider public health for the county. So we've kind of said, that's really not our responsibility. It's not mandated, but it is still out there. So, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Commissioner Kvesi, but that's kind of the way I understood the difference. It's not really Chris, I think, was saying that, Commissioner Meyer was saying that make sure the staff has the tools and the understanding that they're supported going forward during the pandemic to get things done. And I think we're doing that, that's clear. But there's a point when the pandemic kind of stops, and then you still have these other issues. And I think that's more what maybe Commissioner Kvesi was talking about.
Yeah, and actually I was going to use the homeless, I don't know what to call them, a task force or a community group, as an example of why this is needed. But, and you used it as an example of why it isn't needed. I've seen a difference since there has been participation from the county, and I really appreciate Mr. Fritz and Karen Sanis participating in these discussions, because I think that's really critical. I'm not saying we need to have responsibility or total responsibility, but most of these options are being dealt with under community collaborations. We don't necessarily handle, any of those kinds of things directly and only from the county. our food programs, food shortage or food insecurity goes through Winona Volunteer Services and all of those other options that we use. We use the hub, all of those. But I have seen a difference with the group in their own planning since we have participated. And I would like to see that kind of participation continue in the future. I'm not saying it has to be Mr. Fritz or Karen Sanis, but I think we need someone from county services, in on those discussions. First of all, to prevent the committee from going off on, why isn't the county doing this? They have a responsibility, and all of those kinds of discussions. Which go in the wrong direction, because we just need to be participating in the discussions. And yes, the homeless population is not a mandated services, but if we're mandated to provide education and prevention, it's ongoing prevention sometimes to have some of these programs, just as it's ongoing prevention to have the diversion programs. Those aren't mandated either, but we know the effect when we get in early and we get in with a team of people to help on these community problems. So that was really my discussion, and to rely on not only the staff's experiences recently, but also the community health survey, because I think some additional issues have come out in that community health survey.
Well, if Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I think that Administrator Fritz interprets my intentions correctly. So the state has provided money, but the county has to apply for it. And I understand that Ms. Sanis has applied for some of that money, and that the administrator has been involved to make sure that homeless folks can have a place to stay based on the money that the state is providing in one of the pieces of legislation that has to do with the pandemic. The reason that poses a public health risk is because as retail places well, as all of the programming that was like the homeless shelter and the churches that provided meals, all of those services closed down. Any retail establishments that were open would be the only place for them to go to provide, to find shelter, and that would really pose public health risk to all of the rest of us. So to the extent during this pandemic that there's something we don't regularly do, and especially if the state or FEMA money can be used. So let's say that when we hit our surge sometime next month, if there is a need for housing for someone who has tested positive or needs to be quarantined and they can't go to their residence for some reason or another, and the FEMA money it's been indicated that the FEMA money can be spent on that, I want our staff to feel that they can take those actions during this time, in particular, if emergency funds are available to do that service.
Yes, this is Commissioner Kavesi. I have a comment, because the county did apply for
Yes.
some of this additional money, and I applaud that. I think our participation, again, Mr. Fritz and Ms. Sanis, participating with the homeless task force allowed us to know what to apply for, how much to apply for, to make a group decision about how to use that money, those kinds of things. Whereas without that county participation, I'm not sure we would have, gone forward. I don't know, that's a speculation. But I know that the participation did help us make those decisions about that participation, and that's just one example.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
So Commissioner Kavesi mentioned something that I said I didn't support something, and if I was misunderstood, I support the efforts of that community group, and I've been working with them and all that kind of thing. I think one thing that I guess we didn't let the board know because we've been so busy doing this kind of stuff is that we did get money from the federal or from the state government for the homeless situation, and the county is providing money through the state's allocation for the homeless for the month of May. So we're sheltering them. We're doing what needs to be done. We're working with that group. We're working with volunteer services, and we had been working with Catholic Charities until they furloughed a bunch of people, and also working with Winona Health in the community hub, and all kinds of things like that. The whole thing that I think what I want to take away from this is, and to let the board know is, we're trying to collaborate more and more. Karen Sandus and I, since she was appointed as the director, have talked about how can we collaborate more with agencies that are out there in the community, and support things like the community hub, which is kind of that team approach to dealing with the social determinants of health and the things that come up on the every 3-year community health assessment. So there's a lot of stuff kind of going on there, and then the pandemic kind of hit in the middle of that. So we've had to move a little bit toward emergency kind of collaboration, but we're doing a lot of collaboration with those groups. And as a matter of fact, to Commissioner Meyer's point, we've also extended, this is the FEMA reimbursement, but to various agencies, for instance, in the nursing homes, to bring back student nurses and other staff that might be furloughed, where we can use FEMA money to pay for, trying to deal with those places that have a large COVID problem. So we're working really hard behind the scenes to support, between Ben Klinger and Jeff Peterson and Betsy Zeller and myself and Karen. We're working with those groups, and I think in the future we want to continue to have a presence, and I think that's what Commissioner Kuvesi was saying in some of those discussions, not necessarily spending the county's money, but being at the table to help guide those, and if we can get funding through the state or other agencies or other ways, we can participate. So we're not looking at I'm sensitive to not expanding government, but at the same time, I think collaborating with these people, we can leverage those resources and we can be more efficient. And so that's where we've been pushing to do. And then the COVID thing came, and so we're kind of, it's a little different, but we're even collaborating more. So I think we're going in the right direction, and I'm glad that the board's talking about that. If there are, like hard kind of expansions of things, or things where the county would have to fund it, obviously we've got to come back to the board and talk about that. But there aren't any of those on the table right now. So
Right, and
right now it's all collaborating.
Yeah, I agree with what Mr. Fritz, how he just characterized the discussion. I think because we have had increased participation with this group, we were able to the whole group was able to make better decisions. And I think that's where our participation needs to be in some of these community groups. And I would support that we continue participation. Again, it doesn't necessarily need to be representative of Mr. Fritz or Ms. Sanis, but just someone that, can speak for the county, so to speak, and also then take it back and see what resources we have that we can direct or redirect. If it's emergency resources like the FEMA, that was fine, and that's where I want to go is increase our participation with these collaborative community groups to solve community problems. So
good discussion. Just a little, we talked about public health. I think before this COVID thing, public health was a distant type of thing out there. People really didn't appreciate public health, but having been in public health ever since I've been on this board, the health of the herd, the health of the herd is at stake. So I think everybody understands public health just a little bit, better, and has a little bit more personal contact with it. And as I said before too, hopefully all our people have taken good notes, what has worked, what hasn't worked. Just recently, I've had a conversation with a gentleman from the Salvation Army. They want to have a little bit more of a presence in helping with some of this stuff in Winona County. So I've been having conversations with him. He doesn't have a lot of money, but he has some money, and they want kind of a board to oversee some of their opportunities. So I'll be working on that. I think if we took the community health survey today, we would have many different questions on the health survey, and we would come up with a lot of different things. Because I think if you look at that health survey, I think obesity is still, a big concern on that public health. And some of the other things, which right now people are, got a different priority. So I think we'll keep the conversations go. I think the idea is right for, as Mr. Fritz and Commissioner Kavesi and Meyer said, we need to be at the table to help with the discussions. And things will change. We'll probably do business differently with some of those agencies in the future. But great that we have such good groups. I would entertain maybe a 5-minute break. Been sitting on this hard chair a long time.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, 5-minute break, people. Go get a coffee refill or a
Thank you, Madam Chair.
potty break. You're welcome. See you in 5. Yeah, I'm,
While we're waiting, do you like my cup?
aha, yes, yes.
All right.
Hey, if we have a football and a basketball team next fall, I think we're doing pretty good in recruiting.
Yes, I hope we do. But that picture of the campus this morning in the Tribune was pretty
Pretty
lonely.
bleak. Yeah. Yeah, my daughter doesn't know if she still has a job or not.
Oh no. In the dental school?
What's that?
In the dental school?
Well, they're thinking of furloughing some people.
Oh boy. Oof.
They don't know what's going to happen there.
I'm not hearing anybody.
Oh, are you hearing me? Can you hear me, Marie?
Well, I hear you.
Yeah, Marie.
Yeah.
Steve, you can hear? Can everybody hear Greg?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay,
I can.
Marie? What'd you do, Marie?
Hmm.
Can you hear now, Marie? No?
Hmm.
There's a little, yeah, I can't. Who's the tech person? What button do you push? So you leave it and it changes on you. Can you hear
I'm
now?
not hearing anybody.
Okay.
I
What
can hear audio.
we can hear you. There's that little microphone down on the right-hand box, but what is that? Does that do anything for you? Wait, on my screen, way down in the corner. Or did you unmute yourself? Your hand's up. You're not muted by the thing on the side here. Can you hear yet, Marie? Oh, turn up your computer volume. Did you turn the volume down?
Unplug your headphones.
No, she doesn't. Chris has headphones.
I don't think she has headphones.
No.
Put your hearing aids back in.
Are you good at sign language?
Yes.
You got it?
Is it working?
She does have headphones. Did you have those in before?
Ta-da! I'm back. Sorry.
That's
Technology is wonderful, but
technology. We didn't know that you had earphones on.
Yeah, because you're very stealthy.
Okay. All right. Lessons learned. Take good notes. If you're using earbuds, put your earbuds in.
We'll be masters at this when we're done.
All right. We're all back together. Last item here for discussion 7.4. Discuss possibility of repurposing revolving loan fund. And Commissioner Meyer, I think you.
I did, and I feel bad because I probably should have investigated before I even asked for this, because I talked to someone else on the committee who indicated to me that we as the county board don't have authority to direct the EDA to do anything. And maybe the county attorney can confirm that. I understood that was a statutory thing.
Commissioner Meyer, that's right. And I had asked Paul Ellison, who's our assistant county attorney, who now works with Kay on EDA, to do some research on that, just to double check. So Paul, I see you're there. Do you want to just speak to that briefly?
Paul?
Paul? Are you there, Paul? I think he's there. AT, there he is.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, turn up your volume a little.
Okay. I haven't had to use Zoom yet, so I'm trying to make sure I do everything correctly.
Okay, is ATPRE your alias? We use names here, not initials. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I did do some research. There isn't a direct way for the county board to direct the EDA to take any action. I think the board has an enabling resolution to establish EDA, and then it pretty much took a step back, and EDA is a separate entity. So at this point, the county board cannot direct EDA to take any direct action.
Yeah. So knowing that, without that, I probably would have never said anything. I was really hoping that because the loan funds hadn't really been fully used, that maybe there was a way to be more helpful during the economic recovery from the pandemic, and make some suggestions. But I mean, I don't think that's anything that's within our power. So. I get, never mind.
Okay, Kay Qualley, I see you have your hand. Kay?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair, and Commissioner Meyer and the Accounting Attorney's Office. So the idea before the COVID-19 hit was the EDA full board was planning a strategic planning session in April, which had been suggested by board representatives. And we delayed that to July this year, which is the next regularly scheduled meeting. The loan committee is meeting on Thursday. We have a request for a warehousing loan, just as a short update, as long as this topic came up. We've had a couple of loans close early. And so, you know, it is good timing for strategic planning. The last direction that the EDA had was local food movement, you know, there was an outgrowth of, you know, we had the cheesemaker, which is doing well because it's retail grocery. So we've been checking in with existing loan holders, and only one loan holder so far has asked for some temporary forbearance, and that is the other thing that the loan committee will be meeting about in a public session. A very minor amount of their loan is remaining. That is the extent of whom we've been contacted by in that regard. Through Minnesota Deed, there's been a 16-county meeting, a Zoom meeting, which makes this one look very small. A lot of EDAs have talked about not wanting to throw dollars, small loans at the situation, and supporting the payroll protection program. Some have done some kind of creative things, which I thought, you know, might be fun to share. I know it's been a long meeting, but one of them was contacting larger local businesses, the EDA coordinating purchasing through PayPal of gift cards for local restaurants and small retail businesses, and getting larger corporate donors to match those dollars, and those match dollars going to the Salvation Army in one case and or food shelves in another case. So kind of like trying to get a double or a triple bottom line win on things. So these are all things that would come up at the full board meeting for discussion if any of the loan questions go forward to the full board in a special meeting. So that's just a quick update, as long as you had it on the agenda. And I think that the strategic planning, you know, we're always, you know, happy to hear input and so on. And, you know, would certainly bring that forth. Thank you.
Kay, I'm pretty sure I was the only one on the board when the EDA was originally formed, and it was formed through after our flood of 07. We got some money from, I don't know, remember if it was federal money or state money, and we created the revolving loan fund. Now that you have a lot of bylaws, the EDA and everything, so that is not, so the local property taxes are not going into the EDA revolving loan fund. That's just a fund that's rejuvenated itself over the years, correct?
Correct. That was not any 01 levy money in the first place. That came from federal flood loan funds. And it has, you know, with very few exceptions, had the successful conclusion of funds that are loaned out. And so that fund has grown some. So there are some opportunities, and so that would be the point of the strategic planning session or any other discussions by special meetings.
Okay, all right. Well, I think it's important that people know it's not local property tax dollars. It is a fund that got created a number of years ago. Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, so I guess this brings up a couple maybe legal questions for me. I'm surprised that the county board doesn't have influence or input to the EDA. I assume that the county board was originally responsible for voting to establish the EDA. And if so, then I would assume that the county also has the power to eliminate the EDA, which would seem like whatever Commissioner Meyer has for a concern, because we have every right to discuss what we might want the EDA to do. And if if the direction the EDA goes is completely out of tune with what the county board wants, I mean, do they operate independently, or are they under our establishment and our ability to disband them? I guess that'd be a question for legal.
Yeah, Commissioner or Chair Ward and Commissioner Jacob, there's other examples where you've created boards or some entity and you don't have the authority to tell them what they should or shouldn't do and actually order them to do that. The EDA, you can provide recommendation to. You can, say we'd really like you to look at, say, COVID stuff. And there's two members of the board that are on the EDA, which can bring that forward.
Looks like Paul is really alerting me here. I don't know if he's got some critical.
No, sorry, my phone. I was unmuted accidentally, so my phone's ringing. Sorry.
Oh, okay. It looked like you were really trying to get my attention. I'm sorry. Okay, continue on.
Okay, so yes, the board created the EDA. The board can dissolve the EDA, but that's the extent of your authority. Other than, yeah, you can make what would I call it?
Recommendations.
Recommendations, yeah, as to, consider this and that's, I think, one of the functions of the board members who are on the EDA, that, they can participate in the discussions. The board the county board isn't going to make any decisions on EDA loan, applications or other things like that.
Yeah, I was just wondering how ultimately the citizenry would have input or influence on. I thought it sounded like the county board creates this. Once the EDA is created, the county board has no authority over it, and it can run amok. But that really can't happen, because if EDA is completely out of tune with the people who are elected to establish or dissolve the EDA, if it runs amok and it's not where the elected officials want it to go, then you would just dissolve it. So.
Right, you can dissolve it if there's if there's a reason to do that. Mm-hmm.
But I do believe that Commissioner Meyer has the right to express her concerns or directions or whatever, and it's just a recommendation, not that we have authority.
Yeah, that's how I understand it.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion on that revolving loan fund? All right. The EDA.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to speak, with two commissioners on the EDA and Chairperson Jim Verkota, longtime community banker in the county, as well as multiple bankers. Running amok would probably be the last thing that would be happening on that board. They're trying to be very conservative, good stewards of the original funds, because they crept up slowly, and some good can be done in the community. So I just wanted to let everyone know that we're trying to be prudent and conservative with what we do, and keep everyone informed through the two representatives, Commissioner Meyer and Commissioner Olson. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion on that topic? Seeing no hands up. Let's see. We've got Commissioner Meyer. You had an announcement.
I just, as the pandemic has gone on, I know that I just want to keep saying thank you to our staff for all the adjustments that you've been making. Awesome work. I really appreciate it. And I want you to know that you have my support. That's all.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else? I think everybody got notice. We're losing a member of our extended team through extension. Jake Overgaard has gotten another opportunity. I think he will be missed in our extension family in our Winona County. So we just want to wish him, I think we all want to wish him well. And he'll I think he'll always remember it's a great day to live in Winona County. So I don't know if he's still living in Winona County or if he's gone. And I don't know, have we had any other retirements or people leaving? I mean, we kind of lost touch about that. Hopefully we're not. Administrator Fritz.
Well, you mean in other departments?
Yeah, we're pretty
Yeah, we
stable.
lost, well, as Kay indicated, we lost Blake in planning, which
Where-
was, yeah.
And
And
he- The
there
county?
have been other staff adjustments. Several. I mean, we have 300 employees, so we have people coming and going.
Right.
But so I don't really off the top of my head, couldn't
Okay.
list them all.
Yeah. All right. Well, we want to keep them. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that we were having a little trouble because of they aren't doing somebody's not doing background checks, that we're having some trouble filling Jill's
Right.
job.
There's been some delays by the BCA in terms of background checks. So we've been hiring, personnel's been very busy, and they've been hiring, going through the processes, but we've had some delays in the background checks, which have affected us.
Okay.
Still, I just want to say thanks for keeping at it.
Yes. I think the public is impressed with how actually things are going as well as can be expected with everybody being remote and being, I got to renew some motorcycle tabs, and I got the information that I can go drop something off and get it taken care of so we can be legal. Just can't renew my driver's license, but they're giving me a grace period. I can still drive, folks. They aren't going to take that away from me yet.
You can call in from home. It's all right.
Yeah, I can call them. I can't drive. I noticed the old gas bill has gone down quite a bit, All right. Anything else to come before the Winona County Board at this time? If not, Commissioner Olson?
Oh, motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Olson, second by Commissioner Jacob to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay?
Everybody stay safe.
Yes, everybody be safe. All right. All right, thank you, folks.
Bye-bye.